So welcome to FLDrupalCamp2013. This is our 5th annual Drupal camp. All right, 5 years. This is designers do it in the browser. First I was going to call it you're all doing it wrong, but that's too harsh. So work smarter, not harder. That's kind of not all encompassing. We've been here before, let's evolve again. Still not poignant. So it's an overview of responsive web design as an integrated process in your development. I'm Erik Baldwin. I'm a front-end Drupal developer. I use Drupal and Drupal only. That is my CMS. Anyone who loves WordPress, you're at the wrong place.
Is your presentation like entirely jQuery, or is it?
Yeah, it is. No, it's all jQuery.
Sweet.
So I'm a front-end Drupal developer. I'm also a digital nomad. I travel around to different cities, get involved with the Drupal communities there. It's very fruitious both on a business and a self-fulfilling level. I evangelize Drupal. If you can't tell, I have blue hair. That's because I breathe, eat, and sleep Drupal. I solve coding problems in dreams. I'm also a decent human, regardless of what people say.
What do they say?
Lots of things. So responsive web design is not mobile design. It's not specific to mobile. Fixed width grids are great, but they don't belong everywhere. We are, as designers, have a very bad habit of putting fixed widths on flexible media. The only place that really belongs is in print, where the page doesn't change size. So just kind of an overview for what responsive design really is for. Samsung's approach is there's one device for every single thing. Apple's approach, 4 devices. How long would it take you to make 26 mockups? Can anyone just guess on hours?
26 times as long as it would take you to make one.
There you go. So let's compare Apple's and Samsung's real quick, because there's a lot to learn here. All right. So Apple and Samsung both have the same motto: a device for everyone, but totally different approaches. Apple creates one product for as many people as possible. There's no AWS 1700 megahertz iPhone, because that's just too niche, and Samsung probably has one somewhere. Samsung sees the diverse world that they want to create a device for you, and then they're going to create another device for you, and then one for you, and then one for me. But they're totally different. So this is not really the best approach, because it causes more work for us. So time is money. We all know this. We all work for either ourselves or someone else. So our goal in responsive development is to save time. Some of the obstacles here are that it takes longer to do flat files, because then you have to do it in CSS. So it's the same design done twice. So 20 hours in a flat mockup and then 20 hours in CSS and HTML doesn't really make sense. You're paying 2 people to do one thing twice. Let's see, I lost my spot in my notes. Adopting a new process is really hard for a lot of us who are good at what we do, because we're set in our ways. And I think it's a quality of every designer. We're perfectionists. So when we get really, really good at something, we don't want to let go of it. Like, no, this is my way of doing it. It works for me. Well, it may work for you, but it doesn't probably work for everyone. Keep losing focus. Yeah, we never get in our own way, right? That was funny. You always whistle that. Evolve. We've done this once before. We've gone from table layouts and inline styles, which no one really wants to remember that. I don't. I hate inline styles. To using CSS and HTML for all of our web-based layouts. So we just need to evolve one more time. We got away from a really bad thing. Now we need to get away from this really bad thing, which is flat files. Some solutions to all this. Again, where's my cursor? There we go. Photoshop is bad, okay? It's just not a good thing. It's great for doing small portions of your mockups. When you need to get to a really detail-oriented block or header or visual style that you can't do easily in CSS. But it shouldn't be done for a whole page. Pages are modular. They're made up of little blocks. So that's kind of the meat and potatoes of where we're going to now. Everything should be done in the browser. If you're doing something with design that's not outputting what you're finally going to use it in, you're doing it wrong. I mean, you're causing more work for yourself, you're causing more work for developers. It's just not a good way to go about things. It's like a mechanic smelting the head gasket and then putting it on your car. He doesn't need to smelt it. He can go down to the hardware store and get one. So, you know, we've gone from tables and sliced images to CSS, which is a really good thing. You know, a longer design period when you do flat files costs more money. And we shouldn't be sending pictures of websites to our clients. A picture of a website makes no sense at all. It's like a picture of a picture, right? Nodding. Okay. Our phones, you know, mobile, if we want to talk about responsive and mobile, our phones aren't just, you know, things that are there to call people now. They're basically giant paperweights without the internet, aren't they? I mean, what good are they? So we need to do stuff that's going to easily translate to smaller screens and multiple devices in the design process. You know, there's a lot of overhead in acquiring new skills. Why am I not changing slides? Yeah, so there's a lot of overhead in acquiring new skills. You know, if you don't know what you're doing, yes, you have to take the time to figure it out and learn new stuff. But there's so many tools available online, in schools. I mean, I know high school students that are getting CSS, HTML, and JavaScript classes, freshmen in high school. So there's obviously outlets to learn new skills. But the overhead, you know, the time it takes to do that is, you only have to do it once. Then you know how to do it. So you can apply those skills anywhere and they'll pay for themselves. So embracing a new way of doing things isn't always bad. You know, I say that doing flat files as a designer and stuff in the browser, you know, not to kind of create this elite hybrid designer developer, but to kind of get everyone on the same page so that we know that we're designing for the web because we're now going to write HTML, CSS instead of moving pixels around and doing strokes and layer styles, which don't translate at all to the web. Yeah, everyone should be learning every day. I think is Dustin still in here? Dustin said that in the previous session. Yeah, there you go. Everyone should be learning something new every day, whether it's as simple as, oh, I didn't know, you know, that thing turned this way, or if it's some awesome skill that's going to help you make money. Knowing semantic markup is really beneficial, especially if you're going to be a web designer. So if you are a web designer and you don't know HTML or CSS, now's the time to learn it. Because Photoshop is very quickly going the way of the past. You know, no one's going to be doing flat files in 2-3 years from now. Everything's going to be conceptualized in the browser so that the client can go through the iteration process quickly, give you your changes, and then you can quickly do that trivial CSS tweak to change a color globally, whereas going into a mockup, you have to change that thing in 8 files. It, you know, takes a 5-hour job and makes it into 5 seconds. Object-oriented programming helps too, especially if you're going to do designs for a CMS. Integration is where's the cursor? Maybe I should have gone with PowerPoint. You know, trying something new to see how it works is always good. You know, play with it till you break it, then figure out how you broke it. That's the best way to learn, honestly. How many people love learning the hard way? Perfect. How many people, that's the only way you learn? Okay. Any project process that overlaps with another one. I'm going to read this right off my slides, which I hardly ever do. Any project process that overlaps with another isn't only going to add more overhead to the project that you're working on, it's just a bad practice to duplicate efforts. It's just not good to do, period. So responsive web design is now the new minimum when you go pitch a site to a client. How many clients have you gone to and said, oh, well, is this going to be responsive? They may not have any idea what that word means or what it implies to time and cost, but they want to know, is it going to work on my phone? Is my kid's tablet going to show the site correctly? You know, it's now a guaranteed task for any web project you're working on in 2013. Graceful degradation is something we've embraced for legacy browsers like IE. And Now the new thing is progressive enhancement. With a mobile-first approach, you're either delivering the minimum amount of data that someone needs when they come to your site, and then adding more as it grows, either with Ajax or just hiding it for mobile, which is a really bad practice because it's still loaded. But now we're going from small screens to big, instead of big to 600 by 800 resolutions. My points, because I know I'm kind of long-winded. Responsive web design is not about making a website adapt to every single device width and pulling your hair out doing 50, 60, 70 mockups. Because we all don't just do one mockup for a site, we've got multiple pages. And RWD does not need to cost more time or money. It's not an add-on. This should be something that's part of your design phase. So our current workflow as designers, the first 35, 40, 50, 70%, according to this graph, is all just, yeah, okay, whatever, get your spec done, and then I'll dive in and do what I need to do. And then we go crying all the way back to the launch because it's like, well, all this stuff changed, and you guys changed the final design. So in order to change that, you can integrate it. Our last minute panic is always browser support. Interactions and animations, and type rendering. How many people have had a client go, this font doesn't look great in IE?
Yep. Yes.
Couldn't you avoid that if you did a wireframe or a mockup in the browser to begin with? Yes.
Use IE.
Well, even if you look at the wireframe or mockup in IE, you'll see immediately that the type is not rendered properly. So that kind of solves that issue. But these things at the last minute, which every project runs into, it's the worst time to talk about them. Because these should have been decided before the development was even started. Design thinking translated to code, because it's really hard to get some abstract thought from an artist into business logic. We shouldn't build our websites twice, and that's what we're doing as designers right now. Anyone who's still in Photoshop or flat files, we're building it twice. We're taking it, we're moving pixels around, and then we're sending it to the client, and they're changing it, and then we're taking hours on hours to change it again in the flat file. If we did it all in the browser, it'd be super easy. The most complex change in Photoshop is usually very trivial in CSS. We need to know our medium. As artists prefer to work with a medium that they're comfortable with. Pastels, acrylics, mixed media, canvases, newsprint, whatever that is. We as web designers should know our media, and that is the web. It is the browser. We should know what the browser can handle, what it can render, what CSS can do. The power of new CSS technology, Css3, you don't need background images as gradients anymore. You can use a Css3 gradient, which saves a whole bunch of time, and it scales proportionately to the size of the container. A lack of knowledge in this area is definitely not going to make a web designer a web designer. If a web designer, in my opinion, you can hate me and walk out if you like, a web designer that doesn't know HTML and CSS is not a web designer. Sometimes it's okay to mock something up in Photoshop because the limitation of the browser sometimes when coming to mockups and wireframes is you can't do minute details. I'm a skeuomorphic designer, so I like things like the calendar in iOS where you feels like you could rip a page off. The buttons feel like you could press them down. Those things are kind of difficult to do in CSS, but it's okay to use images for that type of stuff sometimes. But you're not going to spend a full day doing one page layout in Photoshop to get that done. You'll spend 20, 30, 40 minutes to do it. So you're saving a lot of time. So what are some of the things that are harder with this design approach? So again, detailed and elaborate concepts, difficult, super difficult. Back to square one changes. If you've supplied wireframes and layouts are decided, and then you go into Photoshop and you do the first 5 pages of that site, and then like, oh, we don't like this design at all. Yeah, it's the layout that we wanted, but we hate the colors, we hate the fonts, we hate everything else. How hard is it to just go into Photoshop, delete all your layers, and start over again? It's going to take you another week to deliver those changes, right? In the browser with CSS, minimal time. You could do all those changes probably on that hour-long conference call. So, if you have a QR scanner, scan this code now. I'm going to leave it on the slide until someone scans it. Yes?
Just clarify, are you saying that there's, in your philosophy, there's never room for a lightweight wireframe mock-up, say balsamic?
Oh, totally, yeah, but that's a wireframe, it's not design. It's the design process, but it's not a flat file that you're going to implement.
All right, fair enough.
Too detailed.
Too detailed.
Yeah, there's not back here.
Okay, well, I'm going to go over them anyway. So. Oh, I can zoom. You want me to zoom?
Yeah, zoom it in. There we go.
Bookmark it, email it to everyone you know.
Yeah, right.
Or you can just post the link.
I could do that too.
Yeah, post the link.
So, the methodology behind responsive deliverables is that our pages are not pages anymore in this day and age because we're having to serve them up to different devices of varying sizes. Our pages are modules. They're comprised of smaller objects that we have greater control over. And smaller objects will give us faster iteration process because then we can focus on one functionality that is across all devices. So a slideshow, get that design set for mobile, tablet, and desktop, and everything in between, and then you never have to touch it again. Now you can focus on another block. It's also reusable, because now, through my process, I make snippets out of all these codes. So I can include them in another mockup or wireframe that I do for a client. So now I'm reusing the same thing that I already got paid for. I'm speeding up my process, and I'm making just as much money. These are the responsive deliverables, and apparently the screen is not big enough for that first list, but it's on the web page. These are all the things that we normally assess in all of our flat files. Now they're components that we can pull out and focus on how they work and the user will interact with them across all the devices. So now we have a more focused design phase where we're focusing on certain components and how a user will interact with them on Android or iOS or Symbian, if anyone still has a Nokia. These are all the types of strategies that we should go through. Internationalization and localization, I don't know how many times I've heard a project manager say, oh, we can do that at the end, it's just a tick box. It's way more than a checkbox, especially for right to left design. How many people in here have implemented a LTR and RTL design? Okay. You'll have fun with your first one, I promise. So these living code examples are self-documenting style guides that extend to accommodate a client's needs as well as the needs of the ever-evolving multi-device web. So once you've got a mock-up for a client inside of a browser with HTML and CSS, that's your style guide. You just saved your PM or your dev lead like 300 hours of going through all your CSS and figuring out, well, now I need to build this PDF that I got to hand off to the client. Because it's all already done. Let's see. I did have an example. I don't know if it's up here anymore. Microsoft.com, believe it or not, is actually a pretty good example of a modular design. And it's responsive, which, it's still Microsoft.
And it's like the only website that works on IE.
Oh, really? But if we look here, we can focus on, this is the navigation, there's the search bar, here's their slideshow, it adapts. Where's the size? Oh, that didn't work. Oh, great.
It adapted by mistake and now they fixed it.
Not on Windows, why am I getting pop-ups? Anyway, so it's a really good example of modular design because here we've got our content features. We've got our lists, the footer area, this whole block, it could be restyled as a call-out block for multiple device sizes. Same thing, more lists down here. If you narrow down the site to its components, you can showcase all the components of a page side by side, and the client's going to go, yeah, I like the design of this. Now what's it going to look like on the page when it's all put together? And that's what your wireframe has already showed them with layout. And if you do a mock-up in the browser with the colors and the designs of these components, it all falls into place. There's a really long list of deliverables. Okay. So, stop. Demo time. Anyways, so let me get off this thing here. So some of the things that I use, apparently plugging in HDMI killed a lot of my apps. What do they say? You shouldn't do things live?
Is it because they're short in the list of your menu bar?
Yeah.
We'll do it live.
I know, right? Little. Oh, there it is. I was looking for them. All right. You guys probably cannot see my screen because it's not mirrored, right?
Yep.
Oh, we saw it again until you need it.
Aha! So, this is an app I use called Hammer. And Hammer is a native OS X app. So I'm sorry to anyone who's stuck on Windows. Upgrade, it'll be the best purchase you ever make.
It was mine.
Yeah. So anyways, what Hammer does is it allows you to take snippets like this. Why is my window? Sorry. Screen resolutions change and Windows don't. All right. So I've got a whole index page here built with, basically just a small template of a wireframe. And I've compartmentalized chunks of HTML that I reuse among sites. So here's my slideshow. It's just a simple content slider. But I've got it in an HTML snippet that I can just include with a comment. So once it's compiled, if I save this and we go back to Hammer, it'll tell me that, hey, everything has been compiled. If this doesn't match, let's see, it should throw an error, hopefully. Yes, okay, so not found. This is where we can take those compartmentalized features that we would use across all the sites, and then we can compartmentalize the CSS with classes as well. So if you've got a compass mixin that you've created for those styles, you can now take this list that you've created of images and content and apply the different CSS style, and you've made that slideshow in 2 seconds. Granted, you had the original development time to do it, but now you've shortened your process completely, and it's going to save you a lot of time. Can I preview this in the browser? Don't look at that yet. Sorry, how am I doing on time? Oh, wow. Okay. Oh, of course, that's open Firefox.
What grid were you using in that example?
Which, it's a foundation base.
Okay.
So anyone who's familiar with Foundation will know what this looks like. But the beauty of it is that this is all compartmentalized now. So I can use this as many times as I want. It's not going to cost me any extra overhead. Sorry guys, I'm usually a lot more prepared than this. So I have a lot of resources for you guys. Do you want me to go through them and explain? Like, I've got resources for people who don't know markup that can build HTML and CSS for you. From if you're familiar with Photoshop layer styles. I've got resources for people who are awesome at Compass and Sass. So I guess I'll just run through all of these. So who's familiar with the style tiles way of doing things? Okay. Style tiles are great, especially if you're in Photoshop, because then it lets you compartmentalize your designs, but you still have to change a flat file. And you're also taking that flat file and still making it CSS and HTML. This is an HTML code generator. It's basically a WYSIWYG field. I know a lot of us Drupalers will gripe about that, but sometimes if you don't know HTML or you need to give a content admin a rundown and a quick HTML course, html.am is a good resource for that. Lazilla is also a good resource for that. It lets you dynamically add new elements. You can give them classes, colors, etc., and it will throw them on the page. You can then export it to HTML. But also the good part here is that it gives you a little bit of fine-tuning over the resolutions. And if you've got a paid account, you can actually add your own. CSS3, please. I even go here sometimes just to kind of understand what Compass might be doing and why it only works in some browsers. But this is a really good resource for CSS3. So is CSS3 Generator, which if you're kind of used to Photoshop, this is a little bit more of a emphasized GUI for layer styles. This is a really good resource for anyone looking for responsive web design tools. Things that you can install on your machine that'll help you out. Here, I should everyone see that? URL, see people writing it down. The end all, does anyone know who Brad Frost is? Okay. The god among all gods for CSS. He's got a site that is a giant repository of not only UI patterns for responsive design, both layout and navigation, and anything else you can think of. This is hosted on GitHub, by the way. He's got a whole bunch of resources that everyone should read. I've read 90% of the things on this list. It looks like a really long list. Solid reading time, maybe 40 hours. So it's like a big novel. So it's totally doable to get through it. And then news, he's got a lot of resources here that he pulls in from Twitter, other conferences, so that anyone that wants to stay on the bleeding edge so that you're ahead of the curve, he's got a resource for that. So frameworks. How many people are familiar with CSS frameworks? How many people use CSS frameworks? I want to see a lot more hands than that, so I hope you guys take a lot away from that. Bootstrap is great, except it's Foundation 1.0. Just saying, the guy who wrote Foundation 1.0 was poached by Twitter to build Bootstrap. They're almost identical. I favor Foundation over Bootstrap, but that Foundation, Bootstrap, and the less CSS framework are all basically the same thing. They're pre-compiled CSS with classes for layout and easy manipulation for both wireframing and in the browser mockups. Hammer app, here, I already showed you the demo of that, but here's an overview of some of the even cooler things you can do. If you're in the habit of building flat HTML sites, which you probably will be if you do mockups, they have a really nifty path mix-in, so you don't have to constantly type the whole directory to where a link might go. It automatically knows by the file that you call, which I find invaluable. Middleman, Serve, they're also like Hammer. I think Serve is available for Windows. I'm not sure. I don't have a Windows machine to test on. But these are going to help you compartmentalize your HTML and reuse those blocks. I think Serve will run on a Unix headless environment as well, so you can SSH in and do remote dev as well. Responsive design tools that will actually help you test a design that you have for multiple breakpoints. This is one site that's... So basically you can give it a URL and it will pull in your site and show you what it looks like. Apparently I'm not connected to the internet. Responsinator, I'm sure a lot of you heard of Responsinator. It's really great, but it only gives you certain screen resolutions of the most popular devices in both mobile, tablet, and desktop. The thing about responsive design, though, is that we don't need to focus on one size screen. We should be focused on the most smallest, the Google Glass, that'll be coming out next year, and the largest, which is probably a 30-inch large format display. And our design should be able to work on everything in between those two. Now, a specific layout for an iPhone or an iPad could be advantageous if you want to take your site and make it more of an app. But other than that, we shouldn't be focusing on fixed width designs for any device. One design should work across all devices. This is another responsive tool to test your site via URL. Matt Kersley is another amazing web developer. He's kind of set the standard here. RWB bookmarklet. Drag this up to your bookmark bar, and you can basically type in what size you want it to be. It'll resize your window. It's pretty flippin' awesome. This is another type of app, again, native to OS X, but it will do the same thing with your website. It goes and grabs the URL, and then it will show it to you on multiple emulated devices. Smacks, I believe you mentioned Smacks, Dustin.
I didn't, but I've read that. Yeah.
This is a must-read for anyone who wants to embrace doing mockups and wireframes in the browser. Basically, go get smacked. So that pretty much concludes my talk. Does anyone, I've got 15 minutes for questions and heckling. Yes. Yeah.
So I do all my designs still in Photoshop, and
Okay.
most of the time the client is satisfied with one or two iterations of the design.
Mhm.
So, and then I just move strictly into Drupal. So, what's the advantage to doing it in the browser? I understand you say the CSS because you don't have to rewrite it, but then if you're not using the HTML, what's the point?
Well, you can, so I've got mix-ins, well not mix-ins, little code snippets of Zen block layout, node layouts. I grab the HTML from the Drupal site, and then I modify it with my classes or whatever I need to. But the beauty of doing a design or even the wireframe in the browser and then handing it to the client is that you can get through that iteration process a lot quicker than you would if you had to go take a day to redo an entire mockup.
But the second part of my question then is, if you're delivering it in a browser, how do you know what browser they're looking at?
It doesn't matter.
So aren't you still spending the time making everything work for IE 7, 8, 9?
I don't support anything older than IE 8, but I understand that some enterprise clients, they definitely need backward browser support. So if that's the case, then guess what? You can get that done early before the site's built. So that way, at the end of the project, they're not running to you saying, hey, this doesn't work in IE6.
But if it's just working off of a straight HTML page, how are you getting it from, if you're just doing a couple pages, you're still not really, you're still going to have to go back and fix other things here and there for the...
But the time you save during this process is probably going to make up for a lot of those small changes.
Okay.
Another question? Yes?
How are you integrating this designing in a browser with Drupal theming? Like, for example, adaptive themes, they already have pre-built,
Mhm.
and you pretty much can change anything there.
Right. Well, you can also
Devices with.
you can also rapidly prototype in Drupal. That's one of the things we do during functionality building. If we don't know if a feature is going to be easily implementable, we'll prototype it in Drupal. We'll build a view. We'll create some content types and kind of throw it together. But again, with a theme, you can build a dummy Drupal site in 5-10 minutes with Devel.
Yeah, and then just copy.
And then you
all
grab the
blocks
markup, or you can
and
go
just
right into the
style
template
it.
files and grab the HTML there. Because all we're really doing with Drupal theming in the end is we're taking HTML markup and throwing PHP inside of it. So you can take anything you do in the browser and roll your own theme. Or you could, if you want to use Adaptive or Omega or Fusion or any of these other responsive themes for Drupal, you can go into their template files and pull their markup. So then you have a snippet for that, and you're working directly with what the output is going to be in the end. Another question? No?
I think
Yep.
kind of answered my question.
Okay.
I think this the starting point to getting into Drupal views and things is a little confusing. So like, why wouldn't you just build the views and put in dummy content there and then style that page?
Well, you could do that too. I mean, but again, you're doing a mock-up in the browser where it belongs. You know, because then it's easier to change that one global color variable in your Sass mixin than it is to have to go into Photoshop and change that color everywhere it appears. Photoshop's not as smart as Illustrator, where you can go in and say, give me all the objects that have the same fill color, which is why I love Illustrator for wireframing. I used to love Illustrator for wireframing. You know, it's adapting this whole process is going to make you a better web designer, and it's going to deliver a responsive solution that's not only going to make your job easier going from here on out, because everything's compartmentalized and reusable, but it's going to make your clients appreciate the work you do so much better. Because if you deliver a design early and it's in the browser and they can click on it and they can go to different pages and see how their users are going to interact with their product, they not only see that you listen to them and they've got an early prototype and the site's not even done yet, but they've also got everything at face value. So if they do have an issue with IE or a legacy browser, they can bring it to your attention. Yes?
I just had a quick question about, like, you kind of mentioned that you do like wireframes in the browser too.
Yeah.
Say you are doing a fully responsive site,
Mhm.
will you take the time, even that early on, wireframing, to make a fully responsive wireframe?
It's the beauty of using a CSS framework. It's already responsive. Like, where was the...
Do you ever have trouble with, moving that over to Drupal? Like if your templates, are you using the same? I mean, you may not use any base themes for theming, but do you?
Oh no, I use Omega all the time.
Okay, but so then your mockup, as you're using it, your responsiveness, do you ever have any differences between the mockups and Omega?
Well, I grab all my markup from the Omega template files.
Okay,
So
you basically built your responsiveness off of Omega to begin with.
right,
Okay.
exactly. But I mean, there's some things where I have to kind of, because Foundation has its own media queries built in, and they don't always match up with Omega, but they're close enough. But most of the designs that I do that are responsive, they work between those breakpoints. So I don't have to worry exactly that, oh, well, the Foundation one is going off an iPhone, whereas I'm testing it on Android that's got a 5-inch screen. I don't have to worry about that because not much gets lost in translation. Now, if I use Enquire.js to move regions around for different breakpoints, which again, that's might be one instance where you want to change the layout for one specific device. That's where, testing on the device really matters because you want to hit that breakpoint so you make sure that things only move when they should. You got another question?
Yeah, just to speak from a designer's standpoint, like, I feel like sometimes in maybe Photoshop, you have more freedom, creative freedom to create beautiful assets and hero images and things like that you wouldn't be able to do and replicate in CSS. Obviously, you have to.
Well, what types of images are you talking about?
Or like slider images or
But
icon.
that's what
photography.
Photoshop is for, though,
Yeah,
editing photos.
I get that. It's just I feel like moving things around could be easier than trying to what if it's 40 pixels more to the right? No, like 15 more. Like doing that, saving, refreshing the page, doing that, saving, refreshing the page. Where I could just drag it in Photoshop and say this is where it should go. I just feel like it's faster.
That's one of the adoption obstacles, being stuck in your way. I mean, it's good that you go into Photoshop to do something, but you could build a kick-ass UI in Photoshop, and half of that might not even be doable in CSS. So then you've got images, then you've got another performance issue because now you're doing multiple HTTP requests for images.
From a design. I mean, is that point? The point of design is to. I mean, it might take extra steps to put images in.
I agree.
I'm just speaking for devil's advocate.
No, I hear you. Yeah, from a design point of view, you want to be unlimited, in what you can do. Well, but the nature of being a web designer is that there are limits on what the media can display. So if you're breaking those limits, then you're really making the developer's life difficult because it's going to be hard for them to implement that. The thing that the client really loved that now has to change because of the limitation of the browser, which at a baser level, and no offense intended, a knowledge of HTML and CSS would prevent something like that from happening in the first place.
You guys push the boundaries though.
Right, no, you can definitely push the boundaries. But
I forgot to give away my book. Do you have a book?
yeah, I got a book.
So just remind me on that. I should
Okay.
give mine away too. So,
I did have, I'm going to think of a number between 1 and 80 because I don't want to open my slideshow again. Who wants a book? Ajax and JavaScript and PHP. 72. 37.
64.
7.
Who said 40? It was 41, so there you go. Oh, yeah. No. Pass it back. I know where you live.
Hey, Eric?
Yes.
You might know this, or maybe somebody else knows it if you don't. Doesn't the newest version of Omega allow you to plug in frameworks from like
4.x? Yes.
It does?
It does. It's a bit buggy, but yeah.
Okay.
There's a lot that's going to happen in Omega. It's slowly happening.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is that your preferred? I'm assuming that since you reference Omega, is that your preferred?
I know Jake personally, so yeah. I mean, when he came out with D6, he's like, "Hey, try this." So I've just stuck with it since. But yeah, I've used Zen, I've used Fusion and all that, but Omega's my go-to just because I understand its inner workings. Yes.
Do you use Inspector a lot to move things around? Or
Yes. Yeah. I won't just say I won't go back to my CSS file to save something. I've been known to take an entire unstyled block, style the whole thing in the browser by adding new rules and doing that. Then go to the browser style sheet, copy it and paste it. You know, that way it's done. And I can do that if I'm screen sharing with a client on a call too, because they'll say, "Oh, well, I really don't like this color." So, well, do you want darker or lighter? I'll adjust it in the browser. You know, and then I can save that and it's done. Yes.
Have you seen the improved developer tools in the upcoming Firefox? It has built-in, it has like your examples
the black bars and stuff.
of like
Yeah,
responsive
the built-in inspector, right?
and yes.
See, I like Firebug. The built-in inspector will actually kick in a breakpoint if you've got your browser narrower. Yeah, I mean, I like Chrome, but if I'm in Firefox, I use Firebug just because the built-in inspector will change the window size.
If you're using Firebug, get FireSAS.
Oh, so I can inspect the SAS files pre-compiled? Okay.
It'll tell you like you have to get FireSAS. You guys tell SAS to output debug info.
Okay.
Once you do, it'll give you like actual line numbers and everything.
Awesome.
SAS files.
Awesome.
It is amazing.
All right, guys. Well,
I have a book as well that I forgot to give away during my
There you go.
session.
So do I.
So you can do the same. Then I guess the number thing is good. But is there any other cooler way? Like, what music video did I play during my?
Metallica. Hit the lights.
Okay, there's two of you.
there's two answers too.
Oh, yeah, there is. What's the other one?
The Drupal song by Diddy something or other.
Okay, so there's four of you. I've got a number from 1 to 10. Go.
7.
4.
8.
3.
It's 1. 3 wins.
Awesome. Chrissy, do you want to give your book away too?
Yeah, I forgot to give mine away.
That's why people came to this session.
Let's give bonus giveaways. I totally forgot.
Exactly. That's the part.
Who went to her? Well, did you listen enough to ask them a question about my session to give that away, or do you have your own method?
She ignored you.
Who went to her session? I think that was.
So out of those
narrows
3
it down.
people, there you go.
Oh my gosh. Well, I guess other than it being 420 and being the obvious, what else? What else is significant about today? Particularly if you're a music fan. What is today?
Google.
Okay, that was not.
That did not work.
Yeah, that didn't work. It's Record Store Day, so I guess we don't
Yes.
have any vinyl fans in here. So, sorry.
Well, I already own the book, otherwise I'm
Yeah, I know.
They still make record stores?
Yes.
They do. It's weird. I guess we'll do the number then. So I had people in mind. I don't know. Pick a number.
Between.
Between 1 and 50.
37.
26.
13.
50.
You're the closest. 22. Pennies.
All right, guys. Thank you. You've been awesome.